prosecutors, the Secretary of State, the governor should be called out on what they have done to these women and called to publicly apologize for the 4 years that they have put them under this scrutiny and this character assassination.
Because we want someone who loves our children, who want to make a difference in our community. That's right. It's not because we did something wrong. We just want something. We want a change. We want something better for our kids. Because Prince County is made up of black kids.
Prosecutors, the Secretary of State, the governor should be called out on what they have done to these women and called to publicly apologize for the 4 years that they have put them under this scrutiny and this character assassination.
Greetings. I'm George Boston Rise with the Get To Free Press, and as you know, I'm covering 18 cities and counties where voter suppression, intimidation, impeding the black vote and removing black elected officials from office. I was called to Douglas some time ago when we elevated our investigation from Madison, Florida through approximately 17 other cities. I was called to Douglas. And these group of black Americans and 2 whites were indicted on voter fraud. When I arrived in Douglas, I met a commissioner by the name of Olivia Coley Pearson. And I've traveled with her, I have posted videos. But now, she, like many others, had to go and face a judge and a jury. And after the verdict came in that case, it was determined to be a mistrial. They only brought her up on 2 charges. 2. I want this juror to tell you what they were deliberating on. But first, I want you to listen to her as she gives an introduction to help you along the way on what I call a pattern and practice of stopping the black vote and keeping blacks from holding office here in the state of Georgia and Florida that I can vouch for. What's your name?
Lanisha Armour.
Lanisha Armour, how you spell your first name?
Lanisha, Lenecia.
Last name?
Armour, Armour.
Where are you from?
Douglas, Georgia.
What are your educational level?
Finished high school, and that's pretty much it.
High school diploma, okay. And I guess you received a notification or something through the mail to do what as far as the jury selection, or you was in the pool of jurors, potential jurors, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you was selected?
Yes, sir.
How many was on your jury?
There was 14 and 2 alternates.
And 2 alternates, okay. How many blacks?
There were 3 blacks total, and only 2 served on the jury's case as deliberator.
So one of them was an alternate?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
1 alternate black and 1 alternate white.
Okay. Was there any Asians or other ethnic individuals on that particular jury?
Yes, sir. There was 1 Hispanic.
1 Hispanic, okay. Have you ever served on a jury before?
No, sir. That was my very first time.
Before we get into some of the questions, can you tell me a little bit about what you thought a jury would be in comparison to what it actually was after you was selected to be on it?
I more of thought a juror being, I know when you get back there, it's going to be, some where we're going to agree and some we're going to disagree. But when I got back there, it was just pointing of the fingers on your opinion. Like, it made people mad if you didn't side with them and if you stood up for what you felt like was right. And I had no idea it would be like that. It was on the first day after I left in tears because, it was just that bad.
When you say it was just that bad, you mean along the lines of dealing with race?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It started when I first got there.
Wait, excuse me. Just go and tell your story. Just go any way you wanted to. Tell us what actually happened when you was in that jury box.
Okay. Well, to start, when I first got there, I didn't do any research on the case. I went in with a clear mind and heart. So when I got there, of course, when I walked in the room, no one said good morning. That's fine. I'm a big believer in when you enter, you speak. So I sat down and I told everyone good morning. So after me, followed me was a white lady. When she come in, they spoke good morning. Following her was one of the black jurors, the alternate. No one said good morning. And following him was a white guy where everyone said good morning. So, I took that in consideration, but I still try to keep an open mind towards everything. So once we got back there, after hearing the trial, within 2 or 3 minutes of being back there, everyone had come up with a verdict. So when we knocked on the door for the bailiff clearly told us that we hadn't been in there long enough to deliberate to come up with a verdict. So when we first got back there and did the vote of guilty or not guilty, we did a hand vote. And I feel like by doing a hand vote, it caused a whole lot of confusion. Of course, at first I was 11-1 on both charges. I was the only one standing not guilty. And being that, they automatically started pointing the finger. So we went around the room deliberating, person by person. And when it got to me of saying not guilty, they wanted reasons of why. But we went around the room, and some people never stated why they felt guilty or not guilty. The Hispanic guy, to me, was clearly lost about everything that was going on. He didn't understand the concept of everything. On one vote, we wrote it on paper, and he didn't even understand what route we was going with that. So he never deliberated, never nothing. He automatically said guilty, and I felt like he was just following along with everyone else instead of speaking up for what he felt was right. With the deliberating, with the pointing of the finger, I felt like if we would have did it unanimously or whatever, writing it down, I felt like that would have been a better decision to do. They told me that by me deliberating, they would have knew that it was me saying not guilty, but like I told her, you would have assumed, but you would have knew for sure. It would have never been facts. Me, basically, I just did what God placed on my heart and what I felt like was right. On the 2 counts, at first, when we first got there, everyone was saying 11-1 saying guilty except for me. But after I gave my reasons on the first count, which was improper assistance, I persuaded 2 people to change their mind because clearly on the first charge, on the improper assistance, the witness stated that Ms. Pearson didn't touch her screen. She only showed her how to insert the card and read out directions on what was going on. So that right there was reasonable doubt of, I felt like she was innocent on it. The witness even stated that she didn't touch her screen or didn't, have anything to do with casting her vote. So on the second charge, I was the only one that still stood up for innocent, and I felt like because when Ms. Pearson took stand, she clearly stated that the signature obviously stated her name, but it was so much tampering with the paperwork and the signatures that it really didn't look like her writing. So that, again, was reasonable doubt on finding her innocent. Back there with the deliberating back to that, it was even till, of course, when we get back there, people are going to, get into it a little bit on why they feel guilty or not guilty. And being that I said not guilty, me and 2 of the ladies, we exchanged a couple words. So the very next morning of getting in the jurors' room, starting back with deliberating, the foreman tried to slide off a note to the judges, basically trying to get me put out on one of the alternates put in because I wouldn't comply with what they said. He wrote a note to the judge without, clarifying or verifying anything with the rest of the jurors. Basically, the note said that I was confrontational and that I wasn't abiding by the law, which I feel like because I wouldn't side with them. He also made remarks about if 11 jurors are saying guilty, then 9 times out of 10, the 11 jurors are right. But from my understanding, I've seen many cases where people are wrongfully convicted and served 20, 30 years of time they can't get back because 12 jurors said guilty. It was a mess.
When the judge gave you some type of gave you all some kind of instruction to go back in.
Yes, sir.
How did you feel about that? Because when we was out in the audience, we had our interpretation of it. But how did you receive that as a juror when he told y'all to go back and do more deliberation?
I really felt like we were at a standstill. They were sticking what they felt like and believed in, and I was sticking with what I felt and believed in. So when we got back there, it was really, a moment of silence for a while until we started back deliberating, but it was more pressure coming to me because I felt not guilty. So they wanted more reason out of me. I gave them every reason, which I felt like was right, but I guess it wasn't enough because I wasn't saying guilty.
Do you think that some of the people that was on the jury possibly felt that they were being attacked, or there was confusion, or they feared, maybe their peers or the foreman or something like that?
felt like someone was coming for them, I felt like me. Especially what really made me feel like they were coming for me when the note was trying to be passed off. I felt like why only me had to be confrontational when it takes two to argue. So if it's two of us going back and forth, obviously I'm not the only one confrontational. And you know, one of the guys also made a remark, one of the older guys sitting next to me said that, well, if she don't want to comply, then we can get her switched out with one of the alternates to come in. And I told him the judge clearly said that if you weren't ill or if it wasn't a family emergency, which neither applied to me, then I wasn't going anywhere, that I was there to stay. That, you know, he would basically just have to get used to me sitting there.
Okay, first of all, I want to say that I really appreciate you stepping forward and shedding light on what many people would never know that goes on in the jury room. You are a young person, and I commend you for stepping forward, because too many black, white, Asians, and Americans in general have suffered, bled, and died for this country on foreign battlefields. And we do have a right to sit in front of a jury of our peers without being coerced or removed or intimidated or attacked behind closed doors of what they call the jury deliberation area. So I want you, if you can, to just tell me, why did you feel it necessary to call me to get this story out?
It needs to be heard. Behind those doors, I feel like a lot of masks come off. A lot of people already have their minds made up before you even get back to the room to deliberate. I mean, basically that's what happened. Everyone had in their minds and hearts what they were going to speak with by the time we got back there and before the deliberation. It's just, I feel like, stand up for what you believe in. Whatever God placed on your heart, you follow your heart. No one wants to wrongfully convict someone who hasn't really done anything. I feel like it was just a situation made into a bigger situation.
Tell me a little bit about, you've talked about it, but sum it up in short review, the attitude and the professionalism or unprofessionalism of the jury foreman, because I believe he possibly was the most educated.
Yes, sir, he was. I mean, from the time we got in there, he was the main one talking, laughing, joking. Really, I felt like how he was chose it wasn't fair. You know, most people were leaning towards him. We never did a hand vote on the foreman who we chose. Most of them just decided, and that's what they went with. It wasn't a fair vote on who was going to pick for foreman. He did most of the talking for a lot of them with deliberating, with coming up like why he felt guilty, or he was also one of the main ones had a lot of the stories confused or not really knowing what was what. I mean, me on the other hand, I took a lot of notes and I had to correct them on a lot of stuff that he was saying that they were wrong on.
How does it feel to be young and to go up against a professional person, possibly with a college degree, and you just said that you just finished high school? How does it feel to go up against that level of knowledge, or supposed to be level of knowledge?
Yeah, I didn't feel any type of way really.
No intimidation. No intimidation.
No, not at all. Because when you stand on what you believe in, and human can't make you go left or right or choose, and you have a mind of your own, you'll always be able to stand up for yourself as long as you keep that attitude.
Okay, let's close this out, and I want you to close it out by stating once again, as I come to join you, I want you to state, how long did it take you all, after all those hours, to reach a decision? How long did it take that jury?
Within the first 2 or 3 minutes with being in there, everyone had come up with a verdict.
And that verdict was what?
The very first time it was 11-1 on the first charge, 11-1 on the second charge, and by the end of trial, on the first charge it was 9-3, and on the second charge it was still 11-1.
And so it ended up being a mistrial based upon what?
That second count, 11-1. That one person standing up.
And who was that?
That was me.
Do you feel that you did the right thing?
I know I did.
Or you don't even think about it, you know it?
I know.
What's your name again?
Lanisha Armour.
Lanisha Armour, I want to tell you I appreciate you. May God bless you, my beautiful sister. And I hope that you can go to school and get your college degree. Because a person like you, in my humble opinion, it would only complement what God has blessed you to have. And that's courage and the willpower to stand up for what is right under our form of government here in the United States of America. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And once again, this is the Get To Free Press. I want you all to Google Boston G.B.R. because if you think this is an isolated case, you got a long run to run. This is only a touch or peak of the pyramid of what whites, apparently along with some black people, are doing throughout the state of Georgia, the state of Florida. And I have been to New Orleans, and we see the same pattern and the same practice. Once again, to Get To Free Press, we report what others ignore.
All right. June 2016, so summer before the presidential election, that's when we first learned that the Democratic National Committee, Democratic Party, had been hacked. This was the first story that ran about it in the Washington Post, which also helpfully made clear, based on a forensic analysis that was done by a computer security firm, that it appeared that that hack of the Democratic Party was carried out by Russian government hackers. Well before the disaster of Georgia election security in the 2016 election. In his first full year as Secretary of State in 2010, he sent armed agents door to door in black neighborhoods in Brooks County, Georgia. This was after a big get out the vote effort there among black residents. That big get out the vote effort led to the first ever majority African American school board in their town. Local residents said they'd been motivated that year by teacher layoffs in their school district, teacher layoffs that were really unpopular. And according to one local leader of the voter registration effort, quote, "We'd been bit by the Obama bug." This was 2010. We'd been bit by the Obama bug, and we knew it was time for a change in Brooks County as well. They brought criminal charges against 12 local black residents who'd helped in the Get Out the Vote effort. They brought charges against those 12 residents for things like bringing envelopes containing completed absentee ballots to a mailbox. They criminally charged this group of local residents with more than 100 election law violations, including dozens of felonies. They put them on trial to face more than 1,000 combined years in prison. And you know what? Not a single one of those charges held up. On every single one of those charges, the local resident was either acquitted or the charge had to be dropped by the prosecutors. Not only were there no convictions, there weren't even any plea deals. Acquitted or dropped on every single one. And the Attorney General of the state subsequently had to issue a statement clarifying that actually none of the actions those African-American local residents in Brooks County had been charged with, none of the things they were charged with were actually illegal. Mailing in absentee ballots is not a crime. Registering your neighbors to vote is not a crime. But tell that to the people who Brian Kemp sent his armed agents door to door after in 2010. That's Brian Kemp, Georgia Secretary of State.
address this. I addressed this on Facebook. It's no secret. I was in a traffic stop on Friday morning, whatever, and they booked me, took me down, everything, and my charge was driving with no license on Pearson. And I just wanted to clear that up. I know it's on the list now, Mr. Preston, and I want to clear that up because everybody makes mistakes and everybody goes through. But what do I have a problem is when the news is not getting out correctly and the stuff is not that needs to get out isn't getting out. This community has been affected by tragedy all this past weekend. My friend, I'm not going to say the name, she was in an incident on Manila Avenue, and she was hurt badly, and I didn't see no article on that. I don't see, she's fighting for her life. I didn't see no article on that. And I just think that the things that we touch aren't touchable. We touch what we want to touch when we want to touch it and how we want to touch it. Right. And that's the same thing when it came to the probation officer, Mrs. Stephen Pitts. That wasn't touched until we kept complaining about it, kept saying something about it. Then that was touched. But what I did have a problem with, that even if it was used for me, even when Commissioner Moore's accusation and stuff that went on with him, they didn't use his mugshot. They used his City of Douglas picture to do the story with. Mm-hmm. And oh yeah, oh yeah.
You tell the truth.
Because I was reached out today by Mr. Preston to get a statement that he had already written. But I told him that I didn't want to give a comment because I address my own constituents in the own City of Douglas. I need to today. And I just felt that, I mean, it's pointless because I feel like at the end of the day, you touch what you want to touch. And I just wanted to bring that in full awareness of the headline that was on there. But it's put, you know, I'm saying that license was suspended, but you didn't put another charge on there. But it's okay. But one day, it's going to be a story that's written, Mr. Preston, that you ain't going to be able to write one day.
All right.
And
Tell the
it's
truth
going
about
to come
that.
that day.
It's always fight music.
It's going to come that day.
Yeah, you tell the truth about it.
It's
It's
gonna come
always.
today.
I come up
It's
from
gonna come today.
sometime.
Mr. Allen.
You right. Go ahead on.
Mr. Allen. It's going to come
You
a day
right.
to where you're not going to be able to write a story.
That's
I'm
right.
not going to be able to write a story. I'm not going to be able to go Facebook Live. And you're not going to be able to go Facebook Live. It's going to be stories written about both of us that we can't write.
All right.
But I'm only standing for right. I'm only standing for right. If I can help somebody along the way, then my living will not be in vain. And I explained to my constituents because it's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that have been done that have not been touched.
Right.
And the one thing I can say about it, the Coffee County Sheriff Department was so nice to me when I went there. I stayed 19 minutes. They were so nice to me. They was hospitable. They treated me right. But I would like to say, and I wanted to address that issue with Mr. President because he's here tonight. And I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you. I don't have no malice in my heart. I don't have no hatred in my heart. Because if I want to see Jesus, I got to forgive everybody that does evil around me.
Yes.
Because the Bible speaks of evil and it's always present. And always. And I know you're right. I know you're right. You know, your articles and stuff like that. And everything. That's good. But one day, always remember, it's going to be a story written on me and you that we will not be able to write. Because the Bible speaks of evil and it's always present. And always. And I know you're right. I know you're right. You know, your articles and stuff like that. And everything. That's good. But one day, always remember, it's going to be a story written on me and you that we will not be able to write. Always remember that. And I'd like to get a motion. We're going to recess. So we'll go to recess. Okay. We'll do recess at this moment. Okay? Have a good evening.
traveled to Meigs, Georgia with Linda Harris. The same identical pattern and practice was implemented upon her by the local police department, the local judicial system, a attorney, public defender. You got to review that case. And they removed her from office after many, many attempts. All this have been documented. Now, let me rush right along. We'll rush right along to Camilla, Georgia, wherein the first black female mayor, they ran her from office and she resigned. Then they asked the current mayor, Rufus Davis, to resign. And see, he seems to be able to tell his story to the public, and he already have done that in Macon, Georgia, when we all came together. Wait a minute. Then move on round to Lumpkin, Georgia, former Mayor Charles Gibson and the Secretary, Naya, who were removed from as a clerk, who was very qualified. But here again, that pattern and practice worked there in Lumpkin, Georgia. Then if you move around to Dawson, Georgia, the same identical pattern and practice existed. However, Mr. Christopher brought some things upon himself. And so we're not going to speak that much about him, but he was removed from office because of his own activity with an underage girl. But the pattern and practice was in place. Moving around to Warrenton, Georgia, with Georgia Ivy. And these white people are just like the other ones in these other communities. And by the way, without exception, each city have like a coalition of white people and a group of Uncle Toms and Aunt Janes who work against what is right in the eyesight of God and the Constitution of the United States of America. And it is indeed a disgrace, not because I said it. Let me repeat, not because I said it, but because the video will show just what I have said. And so the problem is getting larger. Then when you come to Sparta, Georgia, with an all-white board of elections. Now, the voting rights problems there became so severe that I was called by community leaders and voters, and I met with them. Here again, don't take my word for anything that I have said. Do not, let me repeat, do not take my word for it. Google each one of these cities, and you can see, you can hear, and you can witness what is going on here in the state of Georgia, while the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Green Party, and the Independent Party just sit, say, and do nothing. Now, in Sparta, they, like these other communities, they called on the political party leaders. They called on GMA. They called on the Secretary of State, Brian P. Kemp, to resolve these impediments and suppression and removing these black mayors from office. Wait a minute, I haven't finished yet. They even went as far as the governor, Nathan Deal, to cry for help because some of these meetings got so racial separated, so racial divided, until many people was thinking that somebody could very well be injured or killed in these small towns. But nobody, including Eric Holder at the Department of Justice and former President Barack Obama and Loretta Lynch at the Department of Justice, nobody would come down to these troubled, disgraceful communities and address the issues. So thank God for the New York Times coming down to Sparta and reported in their newspaper and on their television station, I believe it was, that the police or the sheriff department in Sparta was going to black people's homes asking for their deeds. Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I say to you again, do not take my word for anything that you have heard me speak of this evening. I'm only doing this because you have a right to know. And the Atlanta Journal and Constitution have turned the lights out on this issue. They will not connect the dots. Shame on the Atlanta Journal and Constitution. Severe shame on the biggest newspaper in the metro city of Atlanta. Shame on MSNBC for ignoring these stories, these voters, and these elected officials in the state of Georgia. Shame on you, MSNBC. Shame on Victor Blackwell at CNN, and I have told him several times about what's going on. Shame on you. Shame on 60 Minutes, 48-hour Dateline in your life. Shame. Shame on the NAACP, the SCLC, and other civil rights organizations in the Congressional Black Caucus. Shame on you all. Shame, shame, shame on the civil rights leaders of today versus the interests of the civil rights leaders for yesterday. Because you are ignoring this, and yet the Democratic Party gonna tell black people and white people, we want your vote. The hell you do, according to the people in Sylvester, Georgia. Yeah, the civil rights leaders in Sylvester, which came from Columbus, Georgia, said, turn the light on, let us see the big picture. They said that as the Democratic Party ignored the people in Madison, Florida, Quitman, Georgia, Meigs, Georgia, Camilla, Georgia, Lumpkin, Georgia, Dawson, Georgia, Clayton County, Georgia, Warrington, Georgia, Sparta, Georgia. Therefore, we're not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Here again, go to Sylvester, Georgia video and watch how black people came together and said they were not going to be used. They were not going to be used. They were not going to be used by the Democratic Party, and that they were not going to vote for Hillary Clinton because the Democrats ignored them in their pain, suffering, and even in the death of a Georgia citizen who had lupus. And so now, the Democratic Party Chairman DuBose Porter was notified over and over again. Letters were sent. Mayor Ann Whippaloo traveled to Atlanta, went to the Court of Appeals several times, and won her case every time she went into court for the most part. And yet no news media, not a single news media in Georgia or in the United States of America would then nor now connect the dots between all these cities and counties that I have just mentioned to you as a social media person on the Get To Free Press. Wait a minute. I brought you from Madison, Florida to Sparta, Georgia, and all in between. But wait a minute. Wait a minute. I want to say to you once again, isn't it strange that the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, which we know is owned by white folks, controlled by white folk, and influenced and operated by white folk, and yet they refuse to connect the dots of all these troubled areas where that white system of suppressing, controlling, and removing blacks from office, even by judges, that some of these communities are calling a disgrace, and I put this apple in the barrel. Don't take my word for it. Listen to the videos, and you will catch the flavor of the people's nature who have told their stories, but apparently they want to keep you deaf, dumb, and blind to the tidings, and unable to make intelligent decisions based on facts. Wait a minute. Let me continue. So when we leave Sparta, Atlanta Journal-Constitution and CNN with Victor Blackwell said to the people in these troubled communities and the state of Georgia, along with the rest of America and the world, CNN said, lights out. Lights out. Victor Blackwell said, lights out. 60 minutes and 48 hours say, lights out. We don't want people to know about that. Shh. 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 But when you enter the city limits of Gordon, Georgia, you will see the worst city in the state of Georgia. You will see a group of whites called the White Concerned Citizens Group. You look at the videos and see how whites brought pictures in of the mayor with ropes and other paraphernalia that you would not believe existed in 2015, 16, and 17. You wouldn't believe that black and white stood with Mayor Whipperloo. You would not believe what they have done in that city. And it has been made public through conversations, even before Mayor Marianne Whipperloo became the first female mayor, the first black mayor. Ever in the history of Gordon. But before she took office, according to her, white people in that community wanted her to turn the lights on. They wanted her to not take office until she came up with a forensic audit, because they believed that Mayor Turner, who was the mayor before her, I think I'm right, say that the finances were in shambles or had never been properly accounted for. And so white people told her, according to her, and she'll tell you about it, do not take my word for it. They said to her, you better do a deep, deep investigation on the money, on the money, on the money, on the money. The finance chair, the late Terry Reese, said the same thing. You can see all this on video. He said he didn't know how many accounts the city had. He said he don't know how much money is in the accounts. He said, but I do know they have 19 accounts with less than 2,500 people. And he questioned that. And he died fighting for a forensic audit. And we believe that the stress placed upon him could have contributed to his untimely death, along with the mayor's husband, Mr. Lou. He fell dead or fell down in City Hall because, according to them, and he had told me about the pressures they were thrusting upon him. And the local news media, the Wilkinson County Post and the television stations are all in the clique and among the slicks. And somebody got to tell it. Somebody got to tell it. And the citizens in that town have already told it. And they have it on video, and I record it by the grace of God, and it's there for you to receive. And all this have been forwarded to all news media networks that I've addressed here in the state of Georgia. They are fully aware of it, But once again, they want to keep you all in the dark or in the white. That's what they want. But I refuse, as a retired military veteran, to let white people and Uncle Toms and Aunt Janes put such a white scratch mark upon our republic. When I was in the armed forces, I took an oath and obligation called the Code of Conduct. And everybody that go into the armed forces must swear that I am an American fighting man, and I am prepared to give my life in the defense of my country. And when I will fight against all foreign and domestic enemies that come up against this nation. I don't understand how in heaven, let me say it again, I do not understand how in heaven black, white, right veterans and active duty personnel can see all of this happening and then watch CNN of Victor Blackwell, MSNBC, formerly Al Sharpton was there, and they didn't connect the dots to show what voting rights have been brought down to here in the state of Georgia. And at the Secretary of State yearly meetings, you ought to see what went down, and it's all recorded. Just Google the Secretary of State, Brian P. Kemp, in Macon, Georgia, and connect the dots. When citizens and voters came before the Secretary of State, the Atlanta Journal and Constitution reported, but they didn't report that. And yet people talk about freedom of the press and freedom of speech and your right to vote and freedom of religion. The American people had better wake up, my friends. And so, Mayor Ann Whippaloo, still in office, time to be reelected, but she probably won't, because this white system that they have in place is working like a clock. You cannot say it's unsuccessful because it's clapping and popping all over the place. Some pops is not as loud as others, but the pattern and the practice is working. They're removing you from office. Yet the Democratic Party say we want your vote. And blacks are saying the hell you do. Many blacks and white right people are saying I'm not going to vote at all. And this is what is happening. And I warn the Democratic Party. I've been telling the leaders in the Democratic Party that blacks are not going to vote for you, man. They're not going to vote for any of you in these troubled cities because you won't even come and assist them. You will not even tell their stories. And they say they are tired of being made a fool of. That's what they are telling me, and that's what they are telling you if you would listen to the videos that they produced. Not me, the people here in the state of Georgia. But do you care? The Democratic Party don't care. And this is why I've been saying that this is a golden opportunity for the Republican Party, the Green Party, to come to these small towns and do their thing and win these voters over, because they want to vote for somebody, but they just can't vote for a pimp. They're tired of being pimped. And some of the Democratic Party don't even believe it. Yeah, they don't believe it. But they said they were not going to vote for Hillary. That's what they said. And I got it recorded. And I didn't say that. I'm repeating what they said. Wait a minute. Let me finish. I'm not finished yet. Let's leave Gordon. Let's come over to Willacoochee, Georgia, wherein a black mayor ran for office and white guy was riding around in a state representative car, they say. And you can see this on video. I didn't say it. This is what they said. And it's recorded in history. And when they called a press conference there in Willacoochee and notified all the news media, I was the only somebody showed up, because the white controlled, white owned, and white dominated news media, they understand that black news is not their news, and they don't give a damn about you, and they're showing you that every day. And if you don't understand that, then you are Satan yourself. Google Willacoochee, Georgia, and see the NAACP, the Justice League, the New Black Panther Party, all came to Willacoochee, and they stood on the steps of City Hall and talked about how people was paying people to vote, and white man won over the black candidate, and they sent all this information up to Georgia Attorney General, to the Secretary of State, Brian B. Kemp. By the way, the Georgia Attorney General, that's Sam Olens now. They sent all this information up to him and others, and absolutely nothing was done about it, and no news media covered it at all. It was like as if though we were in China, Russia, or some other third world communist nation. And it is indeed a disgrace, y'all. All active duty members stationed here at Moody Air Force Base, Camp Lejeune, stationed at Omaha, Nebraska, at Offutt Air Force Base, Fort Benning, or overseas in Okinawa, Japan, or Kadena, or overseas in Karat, Thailand, different places. I want you to know that these news media networks want you in the dark. They refuse to turn the light on because they know they can control you when you don't know. Yeah, they can control you when you don't know. Let's leave Willacoochee. Let's come on around now to Augusta and Athens, and to get, I think it's about, let me see, it's 18 that I've covered, it's total about 35. There's another black guy who owns several radio stations. When we was in Douglas, Georgia, he highlighted all that area up in there, how they have removed black district attorneys and removed other people from office. So that pattern also worked up in that area. So you have to listen to the video where we was in Douglas, Georgia. I'm gonna get to Douglas in a minute, and then we'll talk about that. But right now, let's go from Willacoochee to Broxton, Georgia, where $700,000 was the missing. And even the city clerk, when I went over to say they hadn't had an audit since 1991, I believe it was. If I got it wrong, don't worry about it because it's on the video. The clerk told us this. See, I'm talking, but I'm only regurgitating what they have already recorded, because your white-owned, white-dominated, and white-controlled Atlanta Journal and Constitution, CNN and MSNBC and ABC and CBS and all these other TV stations refuse to connect the dots, because apparently they are proving that they are part of the problem and zero of the solution. And so the NAACP President Presley took me over, and I interviewed him there, and all you have to do is Google Broxton, Georgia, and $700,000, and the district attorney have yet to bring the individual up on charges. The case been pending now, but years have passed. You see, when you are in the clique and among the slicks, you are above the law. That's according to President of the NAACP Presley there in Broxton, Georgia. Don't blame that on me. And if you don't know about it, blame the Atlanta Journal and Constitution. Blame your newspapers.
said that you stated that it had nothing to do with the group. Well, I'm not sure that you stated it didn't have anything to do with the group. I know just a minute ago, Jerry Hudson said it was mainly on Douglas Now, it was mainly about Bobby Worthy.
His article was.
Not quite. Supported by Commissioner Pearson. That's what he stated,
Yep.
which was a total lie because I had nothing to do with Bobby Worthy and Larry Neesmith. That was totally separable from this whole thing that you all have blown the hell, because that's what you've done.
Your name wasn't on that flyer for it, for the meeting, as a supporter?
Who held the meeting? You asked me a question. I'm asking you, who held the
I
meeting?
did, and you didn't answer it. Wasn't your name on that flyer?
I held the meeting. Sure, my name would be on it.
Okay, well,
See,
that's
that's where you went wrong.
That's all we said.
No, that's not all you said. That's not all you said. You said supported by Commissioner Pearson. What was supported by Commissioner Pearson?
The meeting.
The meeting that I called, that's exactly right. I called the meeting. Justice League did not call the meeting, first and foremost. They didn't call the meeting. I held a meeting through Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative for Economic and Social Justice. I invited Mr. Bobby Worthy and the NAACP. Let me finish, Mr.
That
Hudson.
was before the article, the mention of you.
No.
Y'all weren't-
You claim that the Justice League held this meeting, which was a lie. It was a lie. You said it, as well as the Douglas Enterprise said it. Justice League did not hold a meeting here in Douglas, Georgia. Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative held a meeting. I invited Mr. Worthy. I invited Mr. O'Hara as district rep for the NAACP. I invited Mr. Hal Presley. And matter of fact, I invited the entire community of the city of Douglas, Coffee County, Georgia. I announced it on my city council meeting. So why in the world tell me would I hold a meeting that's going to succumb to or support hatred towards white people or any other people? Why would I hold a public announcement of a meeting like that? I haven't been in office for 15 years to do something so low down and dirty. See, you had your facts, you had your statements incorrect. Had you all given us the respect and decency to come and ask a question, Luke, you were at the meeting when I announced about that flyer. If you had a concern or an issue about it being to hate white folks or kill white folks, seemed like to me you would have had the courtesy, being that you were there, to have came to me, Commissioner Pearson, what is this about? But no, not one of you, journalism fellas or lady, I'm not sure what part you played in it. So if you did play a part, excuse that comment. Not one of you had the decency or respect to come to me as an elected official and ask the question, what is this all about? A decent journalist who is seeking the truth has a moral and ethical obligation to go and get both sides of a story and not just print one side and not just assume. And none of you did that. So yes, I feel my life is threatened with something like this. And you sat there when Mr. Presley asked the question, have you gotten any feedback from anybody? Nobody would say anything. You didn't answer. But I already know the answer to it. You've gotten feedback because I've gotten feedback. I've gotten feedback from white people. I've got feedback from black people. And they're not satisfied with it, black or white. And they have all said to me, Olivia, we know that's not true. So some people who might not know me might not know. But those who know me know I wouldn't take part in anything that's going to deal with hatred or killing or anything in breaking the law. So on now today, you all want to come and be a part of this press release, this news conference on today, after you have done your damage. Because like I say, damage has been done. Because don't everybody know all of us and what we stand for. It's just the grace of God that those who do know us know we wouldn't dare partake of any such foolishness. And I feel like what you're doing is displaying what you have in your heart to print something like this.
Amen.
That's my belief. I can say to you, I can say to you, not one of you have ever had me to say anything racist to you, to say anything about hatred to you. In dealing with your media and dealing with me, none of you can say that I've ever said anything racist. If it's right, if it's a fact about what has happened, and it might tend to lean on one side of the color line or the other, call it what you may. But God be my judge. He knows my heart. And know I wouldn't partake of anything such as this that you all have intended to influence this community to believe.
Amen.
And so, it's totally ridiculous.
That's right.
It's totally unacceptable. And we are not going to tolerate it. So now you want to go and dig and talk about the use of the Coley Center. Get the records about the Coley Center. You dig on and see what you find. If anybody got any money for using the Coley Center, it definitely was not Commissioner Olivia Coley Pearson.
Right.
I have never used the Coley Center or any facility of the city of Douglas in an inappropriate manner. That's why I announced the meeting of that we were having on October 3rd. That's why I announced it at my city council meeting. And I said then, anybody who is concerned about the community and would like to help and take part, please come. That was my request. But you all are tending to try to divide this community more and more and more. I'm concerned as to who employs the Douglas Now employees, as well as the Douglas Enterprise. What do these people stand for? I'm really surprised at this time. I'm surprised. Because your editors should have told you, go get the other side. See what they have to say about it before we print this.
Should have been fact checked.
It should have been.
Should have been fact checked.
And it's sad. It's sad because it's too late in the day with too much everything that's going on in our surroundings and our communities and our different states. It's too much and too late in the day to try to print something like this to make white folk feel that they need to go and buy guns, which was announced at a church meeting. Announced at church by a white lady that she needs to go and buy a gun because of this group that has been formed. And I suggest to the rest of y'all that y'all go buy one, is what she was quoted as saying. So if it's in y'all's heart to cause this kind of deliberate tension and division, you need to go check yourselves.
They damaged the community.
You need to go check yourselves. God is not pleased. God is not pleased. When I chose to run for office, I found all kind of opposition. Some by black folks, but some by white folks. And ever since I've been in office, I've had to deal with you all saying statements that were not true, trying to blemish my name. So whatever it is you're seeking, I hope you find it. But I can tell you, my name is not going to be blemished because the people know what I stand for. When I talk to the white city employees, Commissioner Pearson, we know you're not like that. But like I say, my concern is the people who do not know me. Who do not know me. Because my mother, an honorable woman, who I got emails and texts from people telling me when I expressed what was going on my Facebook page, they said, we know what your mother stood for. We know she didn't raise you that way. But I'm wondering, how have you all been raised? Yes, I'm wondering today. I'm wondering today. Because somebody from the media should have had the decency to see the true facts so justice would be known and would prevail. That's right. This plaque, since you all say recent altercation shines light on new militant organization, that's what y'all said. That's what y'all said. And I'm trying to find out where's in Douglas Coffee County since 1999. And I was asked to chair and lead this group. Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative for Economic and Social Justice. Not just justice for black people or black women, but it's geared toward women. Because women have had a difficult time finding daycare, someone to keep their kids so they can go to work, trying to finish and get a GED so they can get a good job. That's why this group was formed and has received federal monies and monies from private groups to help people who are a part of this to better their lives. And you would take the meeting we held, which was hosted by Southern Rural Black Women, and distort the facts. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Thank you.